This is a talk that William Labov gave at Yale University in October of 2008. It's called Yankee Cultural Imperialism and the Northern City Shift. We'll get to the Yankee cultural imperialism only for a short time at the end. This is a subset of the full set of slides luckily downloaded in 2012. The full set can still be downloaded from Labov's website, but they seem to be corrupt in that some of the sound files don't seem to play. So the argument that made in this talk is that the Northern Cities Shift is a rotation of 6 vowels, which has radically altered the vowel systems of the Great Lakes regions. And that the triggering event for this shift took place in western New York during the construction of the Erie Canal, when a variety of dialect differences were leveled in a general raising and fronting of short ah words. And when we say short ah, we mean words that are pronounced in mainstream American English with the ah vowel, like cat. The direction of the changes that followed can be accounted for by general principles of change shifting of vowels, as well as by the tendency to maximum dispersion in vowel subsystems. So here are some of the sound files in this. They're quite famous. You may have heard them before, but I'm going to take you through them, and we'll listen to the whole set of examples. Try to write down the word you think you hear when you first hear it, and then see if your decision about what the word is stays the same when we go through the phrase and the sentence.
Black, black, living on one black, living on one black. Old senior citizens living on one black. Old senior citizens living on one black. Sacks, 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 or sacks, or sacks. Yet were sacks, no sandals. Yet were sacks, no sandals.
Yet, scared of Viet. Scared of Viet. And so nobody really got scared of Viet. Scared of Viet.
Desk, 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 behind the desk, behind the desk. So I like that, sitting behind the desk. So I like that, sitting behind the desk. Bosses, the bosses with the antennas, the bosses with the antennas. I can remember vaguely when we had the bosses with the antennas on the top. I can remember vaguely when we had the bosses with the antennas on the top.
Here's a diagram showing the vowel shift. One thing you need to know is how to use Labov's transcription system. So OH is the back rounded lax vowel that looks like a backward C. O is the low back unrounded vowel, aw.
Had.
This is the ah. This is eh.
Desk.
And this is and we have samples from the that we just heard. Mat is different. We heard that in the examples before. Here's mat. Now this is a fronted at. You might have heard that.
Mat.
And here's mat.
Mat. Mat.
So that's that's been raised and fronted.
Desk. Desk.
Here's that's
Desk.
been fronted to
Had.
Here's
Had.
That's been lowered to
Had.
Bosses.
There's that has been backed to aw.
Boss. Boss. Boss.
Boss that has been lowered to aw. And
Black. Sacks.
the assumed ordering of the changes. So raises, then ah fronts to ah, and then we have aw lowering to ah, and then the front vowels retracting. And this is the area that's lit up at night, and we see the cities that participate in the Northern Cities shift. So you see that this line goes directly through Ohio, with cities like Cleveland and Toledo participating and cities like Cincinnati and Columbus not participating. So here we have these areas defined by the extent to which the short a in mat is raised and the short in bus is backed. Recall that F1 is negatively correlated with vowel height, so that if it's less than a certain amount, it's relatively high compared to vowels that are greater than that amount. So the F1 of a is, when it's less than 700 hertz, that's saying that the vowels are relatively high. F2 of ah being greater than 1450, recall that F2 is positively correlated with vowel frontness. So here we're saying that the ahs are front to a certain degree. So we have the inland north being designated by those two phonetic values. The Atlas of North American English was created using telephone interviews with participants across the United States and in Canada. And based on the analysis of those telephone interviews, of the sound changes, the sounds that were found in the telephone interviews, these regions were constructed. Here we have graphs that show F2 over speakers of different ages. For young speakers in the North, F2 is relatively low, meaning the has been backed, right? Because F2 corresponds with frontness. For the Midland speakers, on the other hand, F2 is relatively high for the younger speakers. So F2 for the younger speakers in the Midland is higher than for the older speakers, meaning over time, presumably, this is what we call apparent time. Over time, presumably, the direction of change is the opposite. And so here are these circles are just showing us the direction of change from older to younger speakers, and then we can
Bosses,
to
bosses,
that's buses,
Bus. Bus.
and you can hear in the Midland speaker that is a relatively front ah. So they're going in different directions. Why is the North Midland line located where it is, right through the middle of Ohio and other areas? And why do the cities of the inland north all follow this shift while the dialects of the Midland cities differ considerably from one another? And the idea here is that this is due to matters of settlement history. So we have a graph here, a diagram here of settlement patterns reflected in house construction, the types of houses being constructed. So we see the New England stream above the Pennsylvania stream. This is the north, and this is the Midland, upland south, and so on. The Erie Canal, the construction of it, was the basis, the momentum for a lot of the movement along the inland north trajectory. Here we have Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo, all participants in the Northern Cities shift. And here we have some impact on the population distribution of the Erie Canal. Similarly, rapid growth in population along the Erie Canal. So this is, in essence, there was a formation of a koine, a common language amongst the settlers of Western New York State. So the idea is that there were speakers who got together who had a variety of raising systems. Here's a system that we'll look at in a little bit more detail in another lecture, where the as raise before nasals. We'll hear a few examples of raised ones.
Alabama. Alabama. Dan, Dan,
Alabama and Dan quite raised in these examples from Providence. Here is a more continuous system where words of various types differ from one another in terms of how they're raised. Here's an example from New York City. New York is well known for having some words that raise and other words that don't. So words like ham, sad versus had and am. So we have all of these different systems coming together amongst the people who were constructing the Erie Canal. You have all these people getting together, no general raising, but then later the general raising happens throughout the central and western New York State. So the argument here is that the triggering event for the northern cities shift took place in western New York during the construction of the Erie Canal when a variety of dialect differences were leveled. So what this means is that people were hearing a bunch of different varieties that all had raising of ah in different ways, and that the result was that what was eventually acquired by young speakers who were learning this variety was just general raising of the ah. So what is Yankee cultural imperialism anyway? Well, these two slides talk about what that is. That is the notion that there are Yankees who are cultural imperialists. And I'll just let you read those slides on your own. What's the relevance to the northern cities shift? Well, there's a social distinction between the people to the north and the south of the line that separates people who participate in the northern cities shift versus those that don't. There's a social distinction that corresponds to the dialect distinction.